Feeling stuck in your career or unsure how to pivot in your business, you're not alone. And today we're going to discuss why things that worked last year are not working this year. I'm joined by career strategist Anne Genduso, and in this episode, we're going to be breaking down what to do when you feel like your back is to the wall, how to pivot and have clarity with it. And for those who are looking for a job, why your resume is not the biggest thing holding you back. My name is Shri and I'm a social media manager. My team and I help doctors and lawyers gain an edge online. We help your practice build a social media presence that attracts and retains patients and clients. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up Anne. And I'm
Hi.
going to ask you the hardest question of all tonight.
Okay.
What's your favorite dish?
My favorite dish, like a food to eat?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. See, here's the problem because I love almost everything. So, um, I don't know. Lasagna is pretty good. That might be, I don't know. I love lasagna. So,
For those who are catching the live or catching the replay, or this is going to be a podcast episode, I want to know what's your favorite foodie dish? Like for me, it depends on the day of what I'm craving. So if
Mhm.
today is Mediterranean, I got some Mediterranean food. That's what we had. I want a kebab, I want a pita, I want some garlic sauce, I want the hot sauce. That's what I had.
I love it.
So let's get into this because I know there's some people who are feeling stuck, whether they're
Mm.
in a job or they just got laid off. I mean, the reports are out. We're seeing the numbers every day. Somebody's laying off somebody, and or you are in a business and you're not seeing the same results. Like you were making $10,000 months and now you're making less than that.
Yeah.
So first off, I just want to start with you, Anne, and ask you like what when you first became an entrepreneur, what was that moment where you said, you know what, I'm tired of working for somebody, I want to work for myself.
Ooh, that's so good. Yeah. It was funny. For me, that moment wasn't a clear cut moment. So for me, I was in the corporate world for a very long time. I had started in public relations. I had worked in communications, both for agencies and nonprofits. And I ended up kind of going where I thought the grass was greener. And we're going to be talking about this, but I had jumped into a position where I thought the grass was greener. Looked like, oh, perfect on paper, big pay bump. But that really wasn't, and it didn't align with my own personal values and what I needed at the time. And as a result, that leads to burnout. And I burned out hard, right? So I burned out. I ended up quitting with nothing else lined up. And in that space, I took that time to kind of reflect and reevaluate and really figure out what I was good at, what were my strengths, what are my values, what was most important to me at that time. And then what was I most interested in? Because I started going on interviews for the same old types of positions and I realized I didn't have that same spark. So for me, that's when I started realizing and reflecting. And it was less about not working for somebody else and more about being able to break through and do my best parts of my job, the parts I liked most, and be able to do that every single day. And for me, that was kind of growing. In the other career, it was growing my team, helping them develop and shine. And now I do the same, but just with folks who are looking to grow in their careers, whether it's job switching, which is one part of the career cycle, or you're actually in a job and you're looking for, greater learning opportunities, development, leadership.
So before we get deeper into that, Chandra is sharing, she says it depends on the day. And her go-to is a pasta dish. And let me tell you, I love a one-pan pasta dish. So whenever we meet again, Chandra, I'm making you a one-pan pasta. So I like that you brought up, well, not like, but I really love that you sat down and you wrote, what are you really good at? What do you love to do? And you led with that. Because if I'm not mistaken, before we had, we got on this live, you talked about you kind of switched what you're doing in your business. And so can you kind of walk us through what were you doing before and then what helped you to pivot to what you're doing today?
Sure. Well, I've actually pivoted the business itself has pivoted probably several times actually throughout the last 6 years. I mean, things have to pivot a little bit. It's not like I completely changed everything, but for example, in the beginning, when I was just thinking about development, I went and I got my certification for life coaching, and really it was very broad, right? I didn't niche down. And realized that was too broad. And so that's where I needed to get into more of the career coaching and leadership coaching, which some would argue having both is too much, too broad. But I like it because I think they're intertwined, right? So most people in their career, I shouldn't say most, many people in their career want to become leaders at some point, or they are leaders in their own way, and they just don't realize it because they associate it with a title.
Mm.
So that kind of goes hand in hand, and why I started pivoting. And then I got an executive coaching certification and started learning more about that, and then really narrowing down my focus. So that was an internal pivot, right? And the same way I had an internal pivot of going from communications and just taking those strengths that I already had, what I was helping clients do, helping my own business do, and helping my new clients, which were individuals, no longer like big companies who are trying to either sell something or improve the world, in some way. So I just kind of had to pivot those and see how do they transfer, which is what we talk a lot about with switching career too, right? You're like, you're changing jobs. It doesn't even have to be a whole career switch, but just saying, how do you transfer those skills and position them so people understand that you have that experience, even if it doesn't look like the exact experience that they might anticipate to see in a resume.
What's the question that we should be asking ourselves? Because whether you're looking for a job or whether you are looking to pivot in your career, what kind of questions should we be asking ourselves so we can figure out those soft skills that we can bring out, or even discover some skills that we didn't even know we had?
Yeah. So there's a lot of great tools out there that can help guide you along that way. So overall, I really love Clifton Strengths Finder, right? And I think it is by Gallup. And they do a wonderful job. It's like a 30-minute questionnaire you can go through. It really helps you kind of see what are your strengths. And they put them in kind of high buckets. So this isn't just it's not a technical skill. It's not going to tell you you're great at, coding in Python. It's going to show you where you might be an analytical thinker, or more of a relationship builder, right? Or strategic, looking forward. And it helps you kind of guide through and open up your eyes to see like where you may really excel and come naturally. And I think that's the key, because a lot of times that would be a question, I'd say, to answer your original question. Ask yourself, what comes naturally to me? Because I think people they overlook that. They don't view it as a strength. They view it as well, everyone can do that. That's not special. So something as simple as see, I just said it, simple as communications. Like, to me, that seems so simple, but no, that's actually a skill, and it's a strength, and it's something that can be curated and can be grown and mastered. And not everybody does that naturally. And there's a place for it.
I'm about to
Oh,
sneeze, everybody, and I'm like,
oh, thank you. Thank you. Sure. You just put Gallup's Clifton Strengths for me. Thank you.
yes, I did while I was sneezing.
You're a multitasker. Look at you. That's one of your strengths.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I will say that live streaming has truly helped me to multitask, because while I am thinking about, well, first it's active listening. I'm listening to what you're saying. Then I'm thinking about the next question because I do have questions, but I really pay attention to what you're saying. And then I'm looking at the comments on my phone because I don't, let's just say my other screen gets a little wild over here. So I have to use my phone. So all of this is happening. And then on top of it, the sneeze comes along. And then you're like, do I hold it? Do I okay, what do we do? Okay. But I wanted to at least put up on the screen, and I'll even make sure it's in the notes and the descriptions on even YouTube or the podcast, the Clifton Strengths. It's by Gallup, and you can go in there and figure out what what is your strength. Because if you're trying to figure out how to pivot, this is something that's going to help you. And I can tell you that I went into my first business as a virtual assistant, and then I was live streaming because I was trying to get my business in front of people, build a community, and most importantly, build a legacy. Little did I know that I was helping and coaching entrepreneurs, and then it turned into a video coaching business, and then I got laid off, and I just led with the business, and then it turned into an agency, and we still do the services for podcasting, and Chandra is saying she loves live streaming, but we do lead with social media management because it's easier for people to know what it is you do with one thing versus saying you do all of these things.
Right.
So even the type of person that I wanted to help has changed over the years. Mm-hmm. So I want to get into that because for me personally, we went with a client that's been with us for now 3 years. I have clients that have been with me for 2 years and one for 7 years. But for you, were you always working with the same type of client, or did you kind of change along the way?
No, that was an evolution for sure. And that was something where I had to understand when I was sharing with you before about like what I was trying to figure out what my niche was. And then within that, figuring out who is the ideal client, right? The ideal client persona, the ones that really put a spark in you, right? Like where I'm like, oh, I really enjoyed this. I loved witnessing this transformation. They're all in. They want to grow in their career. They're not just doing because they're either in crisis, because they got, unfortunately, and now we'll talk about that, right? Like there are a lot of people who are in crisis. And of course, I want to help everyone. I want to be able to help every single person. But you can't, right? You're only one individual or a team, right? When you're an entrepreneur. But kind of zeroing in and realizing and learning the hard way. And when I say hard way, that's through client loss too, right? That happens where you start working with someone, you see that this isn't what either one of you may have envisioned. And then having to realize, okay, then this isn't going to be the path forward for either of us. And fortunately, I'm very, very fortunate that I only had, that I learned that very quickly. That wasn't like I was like losing clients left and right, but it became very clear. And that's when I had to start zeroing in and making sure my messaging and everything I spoke to on my social media and everything else was really targeting that ideal client.
So when you pivot, did you figure out, like, we want to help everybody? I was actually looking up, I want to say hi to Lisa because she said hey to everybody. I was looking up the unemployment rate in the US, and it says that back in March, it's 4.2%, which is pretty high. And it's probably added more because Starbucks is laying off from all levels. I just read that Subway just closed 600 locations, and the numbers are showing. And when you see that, you're like, oh boy, am I going to be able to make it? But I want to tell you that in times of crisis, there have been businesses that was their moment to shine, and they blew up. While others, like a Blockbuster, and we know why if you don't know who Blockbuster is, it was a rental. You walked in, you picked the movie, and then Netflix came around and Redbox. And next thing you know, where's Blockbuster? They didn't want to go with the change, so they're no longer there. So it's the same thing with your business or even your career, where there's AI, there's so many different ways to work with to develop yourself. But I want to go to that person that you're talking to,
Sure.
like your niche, because now you've understood, okay, I know what my soft skills are. I know how I want to how I want to pivot. What helped you understand the one person that you want to work with? And that's why you create your content from there.
Mm. I don't know if there was any one singular event that did it. I think it was taking stock regularly when working with the clients that I was starting to amass with. And in the beginning, there was unpaid clients, right? You know, it was trying to build a portfolio and trying to get a, you know, analyze that and think about like what were the aspects, what were the people that I felt had the most transformative results, right? What were the people that naturally were drawn to me? What were the things that I could help them with most? So that kind of helped narrow it down. So, you know, my niche now is more, I work with mid to senior career folks. I know that, you know, could I do early career? Sure. But see, that's part of, it goes back to what I talked about before, knowing what your strengths are, knowing which is what you do best, right? Knowing what your values are for that moment. And when I say that moment, because the ranking of your values can change a little bit, whether, you know, you're looking for autonomy or you're looking for, you know, remote work or whatever it is at that moment. And then the third one, which I always describe it as a Venn diagram, the third is your interest, right? So could I help and focus on working with early career folks? Sure. But I'm not really as interested. It's just not, it doesn't make me like light up as much as it is with that kind of mid to senior career folks. So does that help answer your question? I know it was kind of a long roundabout way, but that's how I came to decide.
Well, it's really helpful because it walks through that thought process, like who I'm really looking for. Because the more clear that you are of who you want to work for or
Mhm.
work with, the easier it is to find. Now, I know if you got to pay the bills, you got to pay the bills.
Yes.
But at the same time, you could still look for the job that you're looking for, whatever, however that looks like. I will tell you, when I was looking for a job back in 2017, it was that figure out who I want to work for. But it first started with questions like, what kind of company culture am I looking for? What am I looking for in a boss? How far do I want to drive? Do I want to relocate? And what
Yep.
is the company size? And just answering questions like that, and you think, well, what does that have to do with anything? Let me tell you. Let me just tell you. It helps define and narrow down where you're applying and what are you doing. And if you're going ahead and doing the helping yourself find your strengths, like Anne was sharing, it even makes it easier because maybe your title might go from one position to another because it has more of what you want to do. You already have it. It just looks a little different.
Yeah.
And so how do you walk someone through that? You know, like
Yeah.
I know as an entrepreneur, we kind of pivot because we know where the money is going to come if we don't do that. But for someone who's working a 9 to 5, like
Yeah.
how do you help somebody understand, the title isn't going to be this anymore. It's going to be looking like this.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I think I use a lot of what we just talked about in the same type of tools where we're doing some of it's exploration and actually trying and talking and researching and chatting with folks in different industries that might sound appealing, but you don't really know a lot about it. There's only so much research you can do like on Glassdoor or, you know, online, but really chatting with people who hold the roles you're thinking of going in and getting to know like what does their day look like? What are their biggest pet peeves? What are the things that they, you know, really getting in there, whether or not you're talking about the company or the role. Because right now we were saying like if you want to pivot to a different type of role, but that one-on-one, those conversations can't be beat. So some of that is just some exploration there and putting structure around that so it's not so overwhelming. Identifying maybe 2 to 3 titles after you've searched to say, okay, this looks like it could be, right? Good transferable skills. I also help people, I think part of all of this is reflection. So thinking about what are the moments in your career that you just are so proud of? You love, you love that you really, really lit up in. And when I start asking people about those, that's when I can start pulling out some of those strengths, some of those skills, some of the things that they were doing in those moments. And it's not just about, the ROI, like that's great too. And you're going to use that in your stories and your interviews and in your resume. But really, again, back to like, what was the strength I was using during that moment? Was I leading a cross-functional team, and my strength was really relationship building and creating deep relationships there? Or did I need to influence folks? So is influencing a strength of mine, that sort of thing. So then you can say, okay, well, those were the things I love. So I have the interest box checked. These were the strengths I was using there. And so those are the skills. So how can I now find a place where I can leverage those, move them over so to a place that maybe better aligns with my career values, the things I care about right now, like remote work, living in a certain city, having a great company culture, a culture that, caters to working parents, things like that.
That whole just deep reflection, even as an entrepreneur, you can do the same thing. I know that I shared it this week in my Instagram stories. I think I'm about going to do an actual video, but having real conversations, talk to the people who you think you want to work with, and see if that's really down the road you want to go. And then after having conversations, you will know what is it that is needed, because you think they need X, but you find out they really need A, and you're like, wait a minute, I know how to do A. I don't need to know how to do X. I just need to know how to do A, and how can I make that more accessible to the individual. So I kind of want to go into like another part of this conversation, and that is when life is lifing. When things at home, whether you're working for someone or you own your own business, life is lifing. You've got parents, you've got your spouse, you've got children, there's dogs and cats, and in-laws, and you're just kind of like, how do you manage it without losing your mind?
It's so funny that you bring this up because this is so relevant both right now in my own personal life. I know you and I talked about before that, we've all had kind of our like blips and ups and downs and all of that. And then also with my clients, because a lot of my clients are, life is lifing with, there could be layoffs, it could be fear of layoffs, all of that kind of stuff. So for me, what I personally do is I put up some pretty big boundaries, and I put them up pretty quickly because I've learned the hard way, as I shared earlier when I burnt out in my previous career, that if I don't put up those guardrails, I will pivot into burnout, and it will create medical problems, health problems, all sorts of things that, because I'm a person that gets really kind of focused and driven on something. And so if I'm too focused on some things that are negative or that are pulling me in different directions, that's why I have to really zero back in and make sure I'm focusing on gratitude, and maybe focusing on the top 2 priorities of life that are, that I'm dealing with at that moment versus all 10 of them. So that's how I do it. And that looks like everything from like time blocking or just like literally blocking my calendar and not accepting new clients at certain times. I had to do that because it helps me focus and give my full energy to the clients that I do have currently. Could also look like I try to dream. I think dreaming and looking ahead and looking for to have something to look forward to, whether that's planning just even a mini vacation, or like, oh, I do little games with myself all the time where I'm like, if I do these tasks, especially the ones I procrastinate, if I do these things, then I'm going to reward myself with whatever it is. With it could be something as little as like I'm going to go get a matcha latte, or I'm going to go take a bath, or I'm going to get a pair of earrings, or just something, and then it makes me a little more motivated to do it. But that's part of my boundaries, believe it or not, because that's how I can stay focused and move forward and have that motivation while saying, this is what I'm not going to do.
I want to ask in the comments, or if you're catching this replay or podcast episode, what helps you get grounded or helps you set boundaries? Because I would love to know. And G is sharing, hey, ladies, popping in at the perfect moment to hear about having those discussions on what lights you up at work. And life is lifting, and cheers to those boundaries. I agree. When you have boundaries, whatever it is that helps you get back into what you need to do. I know personally with the loss of my dad, like there are moments where I'm just not showing up anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's just, I do what I can, but at the same time, it is hard. Like losing someone you love so much is difficult. And then having to come back, and then you have to be there for others and even your business and your clients. It is hard, but it's not impossible. We just learn to do things differently, which is like you said, I have my non-negotiable in the morning. I do a journal entry, but mine is like writing to God every morning, and I listen to prayers, and I'm building my evening routine a little bit better so that I can fall asleep, not waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, just bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I'm like, why are we up? I need some sleep. So, before we get to the end of this chapter in this episode, because what we're going to do is we're going to go to Instagram and continue the conversation. Looking back at your journey as an entrepreneur, what are a few things you wish you knew before you started?
Oh gosh, so many things, right? But what I wish I knew was that perfectionism was going to get in the way of progress, and that there's no such thing as perfect, right? So you just have to keep going, because every time I get tripped up, it's because I want things to be perfect right out of the gate. And that applies to every part of my life. But that, I think, really is the biggest part of my entrepreneur journey that I wish I knew. I also wish I knew that not everybody is as successful as they make it sound like they are. Because there's a lot of people that make it sound like they're raking in, millions, or they're doing this and doing that, or like, and it's so easy, and all of that. But I never thought it would be easy. I just wish I knew that that kind of comparison isn't helpful at all, and to just really focus on yourself.
Really solid advice about what to do, what not to do. And if you're looking for a job, just go back. And I know we didn't really go too deep into the resumes, but what I do want to say is first, the expert advice that I got from Anne is look into what it is you love doing. What have you grown in your soft skills? And understand that this is just a moment in time. Like we have these ups and downs all the time. And sometimes in these moments, we find out that the skill that we have been pushing down in ourselves becomes the force that helps us build a new life that we didn't even know existed. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined in on the live, who's catching the replay, catching the podcast. And I want to thank you, Anne, for taking time out of your day to share all this great information. Where can we connect with you, book an appointment, say that we watch this episode and connect with you?
All right. You know what? I almost always live on LinkedIn. So connect with me on LinkedIn, shoot me a DM. I do have Instagram as well, which I know we're going to be popping over, but honestly, LinkedIn, or you can always email me at ann@mpwrservices.com.
And there you have it. So, everybody, thank you so much for joining in. And until the next time, have a wonderful evening or day wherever you're tuning in. Bye.